Comfrey is probably the most popular dynamic accumulator. That's a plant that gets a lot of nutrients from deep in the soil and brings it to the surface so other plants can use it. Permaculturists swear by it. Organic gardeners use it all the time. Thousands of websites make all kinds of claims about it. And if they're true, you should be using it too. It adds nutrients to compost, improves your soil, and it makes plants grow better. Is it really a great dynamic accumulator? Let's have a closer look at comfrey. Comfrey is the common name for a perennial called Symphytum officinale, which grows quickly in zones 4 to 9, produces lots of large leaves, and has pink or white flowers, which are not very ornamental. It has a taproot similar to dandelions. The common variety is quite weedy and spreads around the garden. Since it is difficult to remove, most people grow a sterile version called Bocking 14, known as the Russian comfrey. Is comfrey a dynamic accumulator? To start this discussion, we need to define a dynamic accumulator. If we use the common definition for a dynamic accumulator, all plants would qualify. In one of my posts on gardenmyths.com, I refined the definition to the following. A dynamic accumulator is a plant that will absorb and retain in the leaf at least one nutrient at levels that are at least 10 times higher than the average plant. A common claim is that comfrey contains high levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But how does this compare to an average plant? Stephen Leggery in one of his videos had some comfrey analyzed and found an NPK of 3.51.28.4. The book Comfrey, Past, Present, and Future reports an NPK of 314.8 based on dry weight. These two values are fairly similar, so for this discussion I'll round things off to 315. What is the NPK of some common plants? I thought it would be easy to find such a list, but I couldn't find a good one. If you know of one, please post the link in the comments. I did find values for some organic fertilizers. None of these plants are reported to be dynamic accumulators, so we can consider them to be average plants. When you compare comfrey at 315 to this list, comfrey is certainly not 10 times better. Using this criterion, comfrey is not a dynamic accumulator for NPK. What about other nutrients? Maybe comfrey accumulates other important nutrients. Mike H. in One Thing Leads to Another had a look at dynamic accumulators and used Dr. James Duke's phytochemical and ethnobotanical databases to develop a spreadsheet of dynamic accumulators showing the amount of nutrients they accumulate. Comfrey accumulated such small amounts of nutrients that it did not qualify as a dynamic accumulator for this work. I can find no evidence to show that comfrey is a dynamic accumulator. Does comfrey have deep roots? It is claimed that comfrey has a very deep taproot system that is able to retrieve nutrients from deep in the soil. The theory is that comfrey mines nutrients for you that are not available to most plants. Before looking at the root system of comfrey, I'd like to point out one other mistake that some gardeners make. Even if a plant has deep roots, it does not mean that most of the nutrients in the plant are obtained from deep soil. Plants that have deep roots also have lots of shallow roots, and it is these shallow roots that absorb most of the nutrients. In his book, Understanding Roots, Robert Korek makes the point that the vast majority of comfrey roots are found in the top foot of soil, just like the roots of most other plants. Comfrey may have deep roots, but the deep roots are not used to absorb nutrients. The deep root is used for food storage and for gathering water in times of drought. Most nutrients are gathered using shallow roots. Does comfrey have a deep taproot? Root depth depends very much on the soil. Just because a plant has a 5-foot taproot in one place does not mean it will have a 5-foot taproot in your garden. Bocking 14 is reported to have up to 6-foot deep roots, and that is possible in some places. The important question to ask is, How deep are comfrey roots in your soil? The reality is that this is hard to measure. The root system of one comfrey plant that was excavated by scientists had a fairly shallow root system at about 1 foot or 30 centimeters deep, and it had no taproot. The scientific data here is fairly clear. There's no evidence that comfrey is a dynamic accumulator. It's just like every other plant. Now, it does grow a lot of big leaves, and it grows those fairly quickly. So if you're looking for a plant to create a lot of green leaves that you want to put in your compost pile, it might be a good choice for you. Keep in mind that it's a bit weedy, and it's difficult to get rid of once you have it. Also consider the fact that it's taking up space while you're growing these leaves, and it takes extra work to process them and get them in your compost pile. Is that really how you want to use your time? Personally, I don't see the benefits of growing this plant, and the science doesn't support the idea of it being a dynamic accumulator. Grow a different plant that you enjoy more. Happy gardening.